Hey, Jason, can you hear me? If you can, I cannot hear you. It says that it's on mute.
How about now?
There we go.
All right. How's it going, Mark?
Good. Hey, I have a 12 o'clock, so I can only stay on for 20 minutes or so.
Oh, okay. All right. Sounds good. It's all good. So we were just talking about like automatic evaluation sites. And I think, the best analogy I have, and I'm a big analogies guy, is automatic evaluation sites are like being an artist and painting by numbers. You're not really an artist, you're painting by numbers. So let's be very, very careful about any of the automatic evaluation sites and using them to establish value. Like I would never, ever do that. It's not a bad idea though to know what like a Zillow says for a particular property. So we have a sample that we're going to look at, and if people want to bring it up on their own computer, perfectly fine. The address is 8632 Alyssa Court. It's a house in Chanhassen. So there's two things that you have to look at. I mean, it's always nice. I usually, especially if I'm going on a listing presentation and the home hasn't been on recently, I'm going to quickly look at Zillow. And I'm not looking at Zillow for anything other than I know the consumer has looked at Zillow, right? So I know they have probably 90% of the time. So I want to see what Zillow actually says it's worth. And I've seen some recently that they've been so far, I mean, they've been off in left field by $100,000. So the challenge with Zillow is Zillow adjusts the Zestimate within a couple days of the home actually getting listed. And so that's how Zillow is now playing the game of we're good at our pricing. And they're really not still good at their pricing. It's just that all of a sudden they'll make an adjustment based on the list price that a real estate agent puts it at. When we're seeing that happen a lot. Now with this one, it doesn't look like maybe that holds true because, Zillow had it listed. Actually, it might have, because Zillow had it listed, in June, the Zestimate said it was worth 404, right? So it probably did happen because this home's been on the market for a day. In June, it was listed at 404. And then all of a sudden, when it gets listed, all of a sudden the Zestimate changes from, we all know that pricing hasn't gone down in the last 2 months, right? So good old Zillow again. Oh, 404. Now we're going to take it down to 390. And it's like, well, that didn't happen, right? Because we all know if it was truly the Zestimate was correct, it would have only gone up, but it wasn't. And Zillow adjusted to the agent who listed the home. So usually when you're doing one of these, the home's not going to be listed, right? Like here's my house. It doesn't look like this anymore, but my house is not listed. I don't even know where that photo came from. It's not my kitchen even, whatever. That's what my kitchen was supposed to look like. So that's the front of my house though. I have a different roof now. Now Zillow says my house is 387. If Zillow wants to come and give me 387 for my house currently, I will gladly take it. I don't know that my house is worth maybe more than 370, 375 would be my guess, somewhere in there. But I would guarantee you if I all of a sudden listed at 370, that Zillow would adjust their estimate down to something that's close. But if I was going on the listing presentation, I would darn well want to know what this estimate says, because I know that the consumer probably knows. So that's all I'm going to say about Zillow, but I think it's important to check. And all I'll do here, guys, is I'll just do a Control P on that screen. And it may or may not let me do that in this computer, but and then it'll come up with a bunch of pages, but I just print usually the first or the second page where it shows the pricing. And maybe it doesn't here, but otherwise just take a screenshot of that, just use a cutting tool and just take a screenshot of this and bring it along to have it. Okay, fair enough. Another thing that I'll do with any municipality is when I'm going on a listing appointment, I will go on and go to MPLS Realtor, and I will go in up here like you saw to the reports, and then in reports, I'll go into the local market. And I want an idea just in broad strokes of what that particular market is doing. And this is the sheet that I'll bring along. And it's got a lot of numbers on it, but I'm only really looking at some key measurement things. So this is showing June, and we can see there's actually been a decrease, which is interesting in Chanhassen, compared to some other places. So average sales price, and it's a pretty good sampling too. It's not like we're, the new listings versus closed listings. I mean, they're pretty close to the same. We're seeing a little bit less activity actually in June of this year, but I'm looking for the absorption rate or the month supply of inventory, which is down by 8%. So usually when the absorption rate is down, the average sales price will go up, but it's actually kind of stayed a little bit stagnant. But I bring that along just to have as a talking piece. Now, if we wanted to look at a different example of what that would look like, to see a little bit different market, let's just go Hennepin, let's go Minneapolis, let's go Nokomis. Let's go like Hale and see. So look at this. This is just crazy, right? Average sales price up by 17% over last year. 17%. Month supply of inventory down by 64%. There is a half month supply of inventory. So if you're looking to buy in the Hale market, I actually own a property in the Hale market. Guess what? Not selling. You would have to hit me over the head so with such a big bunch of money that I can't even tell you. I'm not selling it because it went up somehow 17%. That's why everybody in the class, your best buyer is the one that you see in the mirror every morning when you wake up. That's your best buyer. People make a lot of wealth through owning real estate, and you need to own real estate because it's not taxed as ordinary income. It's taxed as long-term capital gains. But that's just a totally different example, right? Compared to the one that we're kind of looking at in Chanhassen. So let's get back to the one in Chanhassen. So I'm always looking at bring up the MLS number, and we do the exact same activity for homes that we list and homes that we represent buyers on. And the reason for that is because we want to be advisors, teachers, and advocates of our clients. We want to be able to tell people what we feel that the home is worth based on data. So real estate, as we all know, is very, very local. So number one thing to look at with any of the properties that you're doing a CMA on, bar none, period, end of story, almost without exception, is school district. School district trumps everything. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I did a flip on Xerxes in Edina. One side of the street was Minneapolis schools. The other side of the street was Edina schools. The same house, walking, basically that street's got 4 lanes of traffic on it. The same house walking to the other side of the street was worth $100,000 more than the house on the east side. East side was worth $100,000 less than the west side. School district is super important. Same thing can happen in Richfield. You can be, or in Southeast Edina. Southeast Edina, you can be Richfield schools, but Edina is your postal code. And I've gone on numerous listing appointments where someone will be like, well, I'm Edina. I'm like, I don't care that you're Edina. Your kids don't go to Edina schools. I don't care if you can open enroll them. It doesn't make a difference. You're Edina with Richfield schools. Sorry. It's not the same. Schools trump everything for valuation. So when we look at that, where I was, like this one, school district is Eastern Carver County, 112. So we're going to put 112 in there, Eastern Carver County. And then next that trumps everything, I'm really looking for same school districts, same city. So I'm going to go at Chan. And then I'm going to, at first, keep it real narrow, quarter mile. Because you guys got to remember too, it's location, location, location. You've heard that old adage, right? If you can find things that are good comps from square footage, year built, garage stalls, and everything, like basic amenities right in the neighborhood, then you have no right to go out of that neighborhood, especially if they're recent comps. Like people will say, well, I'm going to comp something in Burnsville off of Nicollet to something that's, on the west side of Burnsville, maybe closer to the Savage border. And it's like, no, we can't do that. If you have good comps in the neighborhood, you need to use those comps in the neighborhood because that shows what the neighborhood will do. And that is extremely imperative when you get within Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minneapolis and St. Paul are probably the biggest, but even St. Louis Park, you really are neighborhood by neighborhood. And remember, don't cross major freeways. Don't cross train tracks a lot of times. You can't. So you go south, you go south Minneapolis, right? And you go and say, okay, I'm going to compare homes in Diamond Lake to homes in Southwest. Now remember, 35W runs right down here. You just can't do that. You can't go across 35W and compare something in Southwest compared to something in Nokomis. Won't work, is not a good idea, and you'll go wrong. And even the greenways, you gotta be really even careful around the greenways in Minneapolis. Like, don't think that you can go on the other side of the greenway because a lot of times it can change like that. And when you get in areas that have higher crime rates, you really want to focus extremely narrow. Like it might be not even a quarter mile, it might be an eighth of a mile. And then you need to look at the precinct crime stats for the given area to make sure that you're actually comparing apples to apples. Now that's not information maybe that you really want to give to a client, let them go get that information on their own. But if you're trying to find value, it's pretty important to really have a narrowed search. So any questions? I tend to talk a lot, but any questions? No. So then this is exactly how I do. I've done nearest I can probably figure. I've probably done close now to 10,000 of these, somewhere in the neighborhood of that. We've sold 1,600 homes, so it's probably been about 10,000. So I always at first like to look the last year. So I'll go off market date, and then you got to go coming soon, active, TNAS, pending, sold, comp sold. I really don't care at all about the cancels. I never have. I'm only going to pull up single family. This house does have a 3-car garage. I don't like to make adjustments for garages. It's hard. The third stall is probably worth $25,000 right now. And it's probably actually worth more than that, but that's the number that I put on it. But I don't like to take a bunch of 2-stall garages and then compare them to a 3rd stall, because like me, I would never buy a house that didn't have a 3-stall garage. And right now I probably my next house will have more than that. So to me, there's not even a chance that I'm buying the other house, because it's so expensive, even if you have the room to put that 3rd stall on, that it's going to cost you more than $25,000 right now. So $25,000 is typically what I put, but we're for sure going to say that's 3 post-stall garages. You know, and right now you guys can't see it, but we only have 3 matches in the last year. So we'll go out a half mile and see what we got. It might only still be 3 matches. No, sometimes it doesn't update quick enough. So 6, we double it. You know, and then we're looking at above ground square footage is really important, because that's what appraisers really are looking at: above ground room count and above grade square footage. So you got to be really careful on, especially like 3-level splits, or because they might only have one of the 3 levels above grade and the rest of it is below grade square footage. And it is what it is, but it's not looked at as the same value. So here we can say, you know, bedrooms, it's got 4. Let's just go 3+. And then always remember, if it's got a 3rd bathroom, which this one does, 99% of the time, that means that it's got a master bath, a dedicated master bath. And don't compare homes, if you can do it your best, that don't have dedicated master baths to homes that don't have dedicated master baths. So you want to compare dedicated master baths to dedicated master baths, if they don't have a dedicated master, to homes that don't have a dedicated master. So we can see we got 6 matches, and then the above grade square footage, let's go 1,800 plus. So we got 4. So we know we only have 6 that we're dealing with here, but we can look at the ones that don't have the above grade square footage that we are looking for too. So obviously we have this house that's on the market. Just looking at the photos here. Just put $9,000 in landscaping. Not sure how much they'll get of that back. This is your typical, you know, if you really want to look at it, you know, multi-level split is probably really what you call it, because you walk in, then you're going to walk down to more, and you're going to walk down. A lot of people call this a modified 2-story. I guess there's a case to be said that it could be really a 4-level split, because it's got 4 different levels, you know. But most people call it you know, this is another level down here in this picture. So, you know, looks like a nice house, looks super clean, got granite in the bathrooms, you know, hollow doors. It looks like they've upgraded some of the bathrooms, you know, kind of typically what you're going to see. Nice patio, fire pit, decent. Private yards, definitely a benefit. You know, it looks like it's got a pretty private yard. So I'm looking at the photos just to say, okay, what can value be on that one? Well, here's something that's a bad photo, but property that sold 6 months ago. Now remember, we haven't had a lot of appreciation according to MPLS Realtor in this market. In this particular market in Chan, we haven't had a lot of appreciation. If we were looking at the Hale neighborhood and it was 6 months back, well, we saw there was 17%. So 6 months ago, we would say, if we were going to use a comp that was from 6 months back, we would say, well, we're going to add on basically 8.5% to this number if it was in the Hale neighborhood. And that's just what I would do. I'd look at, you got to look at it a little bit with a grain of salt, but in that Hale neighborhood that we saw the report, you know, over here, you would take and you would just say, well, I know that it's increased by 17% in the last 12 months, so I'm going to add on 8.5%. And one could argue that it might be more than that, because I think a lot of that appreciation has happened in the last 6 months, not the preceding 6 months. So this being on the same street, one less bedroom, doesn't have anything apparently below grade, so it might have a finishing opportunity. The above ground square footage, though, is almost 200 square foot bigger than the subject. You know, pretty much same kind of setup, right? Other than it sold 6 months ago, being that this is on the same street, now this is probably a lookout or a walkout because it's got the deck. So that definitely adds value. You can see here it's a walkout in this photo. Definitely has a private yard. Has some upgraded bathrooms. You know, probably should get rid of, you know, the purple walls. Even if you're in Chanhassen and you're a fan of Prince, you should get rid of the purple walls. I can see why somebody might do that, but nice looking house. Probably not the best photos. The photos probably really hurt them on this particular property. But right off the bat, I would say that this is going to be like one of your best comps. So it sold for a net of 159 essentially. You always got to make sure that you're taking into the seller contributions into consideration. You know, they started up here and that probably really hurt them, starting at 385, you know, didn't do them any help. So I would definitely say that's going to be a great comp because, let's be frank, you can throw a football and hit that house from the subject house. This is going to be one of the ones that doesn't have as much above ground square footage. It did fetch a rather nice price. Not saying we couldn't use it. So this is a 4-level split. So doesn't have nearly the above grade. Still has a private yard. You know, looks like a nice house. I mean, nothing wrong with this place. So you could definitely put that in your CMA. That sold in May. $415. Now this is a bi-level split. You know, this was another one that we would have maybe not had in there. The thing with this one, you got to be really, really careful. It's grays and whites, and that's what's in. To do, you know, it doesn't have the kitchen. It looks like it's got a newer kitchen probably, but this has got horrible photos again. God, they're just bad. And yeah, you know, even if this, you know, if this was our listing at the office, I'd say that these are bad photos. They're just not good. But it's all gray and white. To change everything over to grays and whites, it's expensive. You probably put 20 grand into it, you know, to have it professionally done. So with me, with this house, we could still use it. The challenge gets to be that the grays and whites are probably worth about 20 grand. So you just minus that right off the 415. Again, this is not paint by numbers. If you're going to be a realtor, you're going to be an artist, and you cannot paint by numbers with RPR or Zillow or any of those, because it won't be as accurate as what we're doing right here. So we can use this one too. Not going to use this. Way more square footage. It's a 543. It's, you know, another, you know, it's another, you know, 1,500 square feet. That's just not our comp. And then the same with this. This is not our comp. It's on 2.5 acres. That's definitely not our comp. So there's a story, right? We're always looking to tell a story. When I go into a listing presentation, I'm not coming in with more than 4 solds. I might bring a pending if I have it. I'm not putting an active in there typically at all, because I don't care. They haven't sold, right? So I'm going to use these. Everybody's got this particular CMA that they can just use via North Star, and then I'll show you the one that I use. This is basically the ones I have in there. You're just kind of clicking these tabs up here, and then we're going to fill in the MLS number, and it auto populates for you. I do not put in the adjustments page. Appraisers make adjustments because they're forced to by the bank. And I don't know that I'm going to say that I agree with the adjustments that the appraiser makes. Don't put the adjustments page in there, because then you're like, okay, I got to adjust the fire prices. And then people, the biggest thing you're looking at is square footage, right? Like a 3 to a 4 bedroom house doesn't change in value all that much. And definitely a 4 to 5 does not change almost at all. It really comes down to the square footage. You know, I don't care if you got a 6 bedroom house and it's 2,000 square feet. You know, that doesn't make any difference to me, because a 4 bedroom house that's 2,000 square feet might feel way better because it's got bigger common areas than a 6 bedroom house that's 2,000 square feet. And it might sell for more, you know, so people kind of like to get hung up on that. Comparables, you just got to check them all like that. I keep the map in there. I don't put any pricing in there, and I don't put any adjustments in there. I mean, you can see that this is a very good representation. We're not crossing any major roads. There's not any train tracks. A lot of these, you know, there should, within this development, there's not a lot of, everything's fairly similar, right? As far as style, we don't have townhomes, we don't have commercial, you know, so you want to make sure anytime that you have neighbors that aren't similar, that there's a chance that the value goes down. You know, like if all of a sudden there was a McDonald's right here, well, chance that value might go down. Or we have all these roundabouts now that are going in, and, you know, I think they're great. The thing that I don't like about them is at night, there's a ton of light noise because they got these high intensity lighting systems on them. And, you know, I would never personally buy a house that was close to a roundabout, because you get these LED lights that are making it like it's daylight outside. And then I just kind of click finish. View CMA. It's not any sexier than that. I mean, and then and I encourage you guys all to do is, on our team now, we're telling buyers and sellers a range. And I like to do it a couple ways. I like to look at the range as a baseball field, right? And it's pretty simple. Everybody gets the analogy, right? So we got home plate, and everybody, home plate's a sale. Got first base, second base, third base, and then we got the outfield. So I look at it as we want to get as close to home plate as we can. So I'll tell sellers, you know, right now, if you want to be on the outfield or we want to be high on price, you know, high on price from looking at the comps, you know, especially if we adjust this one down by $20,000, so we get to, you know, $395 for the white walls and the gray walls and the white trim. So we can see, in my mind, if we want to be high on price, we're going to be 410. So 410 is kind of an outfield pricing. We can price it up that high if you want, but 410 is kind of outfield pricing. If we want to say kind of, you know, where are we getting closer to home? Well, closer to home, in my opinion, is going to be somewhere around that $395K is going to be your average market or average pricing for the house. And it probably goes for somewhere around there, even though it's, you know, what was that one? It was a little bit less, wasn't it? I forget. Yeah, 380. So it could go up to 395. You know, wouldn't be out of their own possibilities. So right now that house is actually probably a pretty decent deal, right? So we can say my home plate pricing, or maybe even a little bit below market, it's there. So that's how I explain it. So we got above market, at market, below market. Make sure you're giving those pricing though, because if you don't, what we found that ends up happening is someone else, Durain will come in and he'll tell them, he won't use the same analogy, but Durain will come in and be like, it's worth 410 all day long. That's what he'll say to people. And all the people heard from me, if I only give them this number, is like, that's all I thought it was worth. That's why you have to give them this range. So when you give them the range, especially if you do this little baseball analogy, people can understand. Well, you're within, you're in the game, you're in the ballpark, right? Everybody's heard that saying, you're in the ballpark. Ronnie, heard that saying? Yeah. Okay. So you're in the ballpark at 410. You're close to home at 395. If you really want to get it sold below average market, above average market. But at least people heard that number from you. Mr. Wayne came in and told them the high number right away. Not to pick underway. Well, kind of pick underway.
So how do you deal with just being courteous, dealing with objections? Well, you know, my house is in Lakeville and I know so many people want to move into Lakeville. I think would it make a lot of sense for me to sell it below 400?
I just go with stats. I hit everybody always over the head with stats. You know, I'll just pull up this and I'll be like, well, I can appreciate that. But here's the square footage, and and as long as the reason why you really got to compare the above grade square footage is the below grade is only worth at most $50 a square foot. You know, so like let's say we could finish off 800 square feet more on that basement. We don't take that 800 square feet times this 158. It doesn't work. My house right now, like I said, is probably 370. I have a 1,200 square foot basement. So let's take $370,000 divided by 2,400 is my above grade, right? What do we get for the price per square foot? 2,400.
2,400?
Yep.
154.16.
154.16. I know unequivocally, without a doubt, finishing my basement square footage will not yield me any more than an increase of about $30,000. It's 1,200 square feet. So take $30,000 divided by 1,200 square feet. $25 a square foot. So be very, very, very careful anytime that someone wants to take below ground square footage. It doesn't work. You cannot take my below ground square footage, multiplied by what my above ground square footage is on price per square foot, and be like, that's the price. Because what was the first number that you gave me?
154.
154. So I got 1,200 below. So take 3,600. The above is 24. The below is 1,200. So take 3,600 square feet times by 154. No way in heck.
Yeah.
Any of you want to give me 554 for my house right now? You can have everything that's inside it besides my state.
I've like done that before and confused. Well, I never like went, but now I just kind of just erased it from my mind. I'm like, it's no way. It's worth as much. Like I tried to do it. I'm like, this just isn't working.
It's because of the below grade.
You know?
So you also, let's say you get into a situation where you have, you only have comps that have the basements finished. Just take, and yours doesn't have the basement finished, right? So let's say it was 1,000 square foot basement. You could say it's worth about $30 per square foot. So it's about $30,000. But let's say all your comps had finished basements. And let's say one was 1,000, one was 1,100, and one was 1,200. Well, the 1,200 square foot basement, we'd subtract $36,000 from the price. The 1,100 would be $33,000. 1,000 square foot would be $30,000, but we could subtract the basements from the price. And you could easily do that. I'm okay with that. to get anything out of this though, you know, using this baseball diamond analogy, you know, yep, it's in the ballpark. Just depends if you're outfield, second base, or home plate. Above market, at market, that damn thing below market. So that's what I would do. Make sense? Because again, Dwayne's going to come into the damn thing and he's going to tell them 410, and they only ever, you know, if I don't present that correctly, they're only going to hear 380 from me, and then Dwayne's going to sell it at 360 because he priced it out of the market, and so.
If I want to write an offer on this property, I would say to do 380 and ask for closing costs.
Well, 380, you know, 380 from what we're seeing could be, you know, it could be below the market. So if 380 is below the market, you really don't want to write below the market in a competitive market.
So, yeah, so it's listed at 380. So I could go up to 295.
Ask for 5,000 or 15,000 or whatever you're looking for. The challenge is right now, guys, don't be asking for any closing costs. Get them bake the closing costs into the interest rate and get the lender to pay the closing costs. Because that's what everybody's doing. You'll lose every time in this market.
Hey, so consider everything being constant right now, going into the fall. Everything being constant.
Yes, sir.
And everything.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Do you think there'll still be this hot market, quote unquote? What do you think?
I don't know. It's a good question. It's hard to stop a locomotive going down the tracks unless it somehow gets derailed. And what I mean by that, if the real estate market is a locomotive, freight train going down the tracks, it's going to be hard to stop that forward momentum. It's not like a light switch, right? If there was ever going to be a light switch moment, it would have been the third week in March. That would have been your light switch moment. 9/11, light switch moments. So I don't know. I don't think, Ronnie, that it's going to stop. Could it slow down? I mean, right now she's barreling down the tracks at 85 miles an hour. It's hard to stop that freight train. It doesn't just jump the track and fall off. It's almost impossible to stop it. Could it slow down to a 40 mile an hour? Sure, it's still a freight train though. The market's still going to be a freight train. It takes it a long time to actually slow down. So I don't think it will. It might actually increase, which could be a scary thing. It might actually speed up.
So would you recommend me not selling my house until next spring?
Just depends what you're buying,
Well,
Dwayne.
I'm just gonna tell it, I'm gonna blame it on you, whether
Depends what you're buying, my friend. It depends what you're buying.
Can I ask you about that? Asking the lender to pay closing costs?
Oh,
You
yeah,
know,
that's,
do it now.
Yep, you just increase. Yes, you say what would you go to the particular lender, and say what would it take to cover the buyer's closing costs with a rate increase. Yeah, everybody's doing that now.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, don't have your buyers be attached to, oh, I got 3%. Well, you didn't get the house, but the person that did get the house, their interest rate was 3.3%, but the lender covered all their closing costs.
right. That, I just had to have a conversation with one of my buyers as well, because she was thinking about buying down points to like 2.75 or whatever.
Why?
Or else she was gonna get like a 3.2, and I'm like, 3.2 is an awesome rate still. I'm like, you're over here trying to force money to buy down one awesome rate to another awesome rate. Like, take the 3.2, use that money for your closing costs and things like that, so that we don't have to ask for as much.
Money is
Well,
cheap, yeah, right.
But yeah, like what you said, we can just easily I didn't know how much of a difference it makes.
It varies on the person, but if you're asking for closing costs right now, you're losing.
Yeah, I already know.
You're just losing. Your buyers are not going to get it.
I found a really good program that's been covering closing costs and down payment, and it's a grant or forgivable loan program.
And who's that?
through Wish,
Wish?
a 4-to-1 match. So if they bring 4,000, they'll give them 20,000, up to like 22,000, and then that's been covering everything for most people. It's 10 times better than the Minnesota housing program, which I've used several times. But
What's credit score?
620. Yeah, it's an awesome program.
Did you work with a particular lender?
You have to work with a particular lender. It's a lender-based program.
Or like income guideline?
It's an income guideline. It's also some other type of guideline with like the back end ratio not going over like 35% or something. So it can limit their buying power a little bit, but it's been amazing.
Wish.
A lot of people.
This is what we use. It's called Cloud CMA. It'll hook in as a widget to North Star. That's how I got here. Differentiates us from everybody else. It's bringing the same report. I believe it's $200 a year. We just use one account for everybody on the team. Looks a little bit better. Shows, some of our Zillow reviews. Goes in and it shows, all the comparables in a nice layout. Then it shows the houses, all the photos. But I think it's really important though, you guys, to do above market, at market, below market. Make sure you're doing that. Goes in and talks about, ranges and your average and your price per square foot. How the Zestimate varied. Now keep in mind, the only reason the Zestimate's not varying by more is because Zillow's adjusting it within a couple of days of the house getting listed, or it would vary greatly. Sold at 100% or 100.4% of the market or the list price. And then just kind of marketing plan of action, where commission goes, blah, blah, blah. But that's what we use. And they have the thing that's cool about Cloud CMA too is, like they have buyer tours too. So let's see if I can bring one of these up. So like if a buyer is looking at, I don't know where that link even is. There's some of the ones that these are some old ones too. We used to do a lot more than these than we do, but buyer tours can be really helpful, especially if you're in like this city and people are like wondering like what's around you in a particular place. The buyer tours can be really, really impactful. So they have definitely some cool things that they do. Like this is a good example, maybe an okay example. So it just goes and it shows what rates are, what the payments would be, talks about the schools. So another thing that Cloud has that the regular CMA doesn't. Questions? Was this helpful? Is this what you're all looking for?
Yup. Extremely helpful. The part that some of the ones that I have more issues with the ones that don't have a lot of comparables. And I've seen you work with me on them.
Mm-hmm.
It's really like magic. Like I'm sitting there for hours and something sits there does like 10 minutes. But like for instance, like I have one where it's sitting on an acre and all the homes around it are on lakes, which obviously aren't good comparables, or sitting on 7 acres or 10 acres. And I'm like,
never do the lake part of it. And then the 7 or 10 acre part of it, I think what you have to do is, you make some big downward adjustments, you really have to go by and say, okay, what's that land worth then? What's an acre versus 7 acres? Depends where it's at, but it's probably 100 to 150,000 is in general what an acre to 7 acres is probably worth. The difference somewhere, you probably could go closer to 150 depending on the area. So yeah. Yep. Anything else? Questions, comments, concerns? Stoning of the presenter? Yeah, my pleasure. Absolutely. Anytime. If you take away anything from this whole deal, it's that above, at market, below market. Use that. That'll probably get you all an extra, and use the use the baseball diamond analogy too. That'll probably get everybody here additional listing, I would hope. So.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I talked to a for sale by owner today because I was showing a house and looked across the street and see one for sale by owner. I call them and it's been selling market for 100 and some days. And I go,
You know, I get it.
and first we were really interested. It wasn't me just trying to get in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I looked at the price. I'm like, oh, it's already, it's out of their price range. But kind of, why didn't you choose a realtor? And let's see, it's up there. Like, yeah, we kind of tore it down to the studs, so it's a brand new house, whatever, and blah blah blah. And with the price range, I'm like, oh, how you come up with the price? Oh, we tore down the studs, everything is so new, blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, why didn't you choose a realtor? And it's like, because I got time. So we'll put it out there and see what happens. And I'm like, just thinking like that whole I got time is going to cost you so much money.
Yep.
Days on market.
Yep.
Chips away. And how much the home is worth to the market. So I'm like, now you use this. We're not on it, right? Savvy Mo. I'm sure you guys all seen this guy.
Yep.
Just lists,
Yeah.
he's a flat fee.
Flat fee, pay them up front whether it sells or not. I gotta ask Taylor to shut this off. We'll be right back.
And then they puts it on the MLS. So like I makes a ton of money because like
All right, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep, my pleasure. Absolutely.
almost every for sale by owner just is listed, for sale by owners, and it's just taking 2,000, 2,500 to put it on MLS. Whether it's
Oh, I
something-
see. Okay, because I went for a Facebook and he said it's on the MLS. I was like,
People like him is killing our industry.
wow.
100%.
Have a good one.
You too. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye, Maria.
Birthday.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Thanks, man.
And
Hey, there's some beer? Happy birthday, man.
Thank you.
Did you finish those cases?
No, not yet. Not yet.
I saw a video. I was laughing.